and welcome back to O'Day and Night. I'm your host, Adam O'Day. Today I was joined by college football analyst and fellow UNT student, Connor Hibbett, to discuss who we think which first round QB will have the best rookie year this year between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson. Hope you all enjoy.
Hello, and welcome back to your mom's favorite podcast. I'm your host, Adam O'Day, here with the College Football Encyclopedia, Connor Hibbett. Today we're going to be talking about who we think of the three first-round quarterbacks from this year's draft will have the best rookie year.
So, it's interesting with the modern era of the NFL draft. It seems like we are seeing a change from these analysts and these scouts looking at the ceilings and the potentials of these quarterbacks rather than the proven production. And so I can't wait to get into it today with you, Adam. This is going to be really interesting because we're seeing a total change here in draft stock with players.
For sure. No cap.
No cap.
Yeah, so of the three guys, Bryce Young at first overall, CJ Stroud, I want to say second overall. Yeah,
I can't remember.
Second or third. He went to Houston, who had both of those picks, and then I believe Richardson at fourth. I believe Bryce Young will have the best rookie year. He's in one of the better situations.
Yes.
Albeit none of them are great, but
that's what happens when you have a quarterback that goes in the first round. They're typically not going to be in a great situation. That's why they're going that early.
Exactly,
yeah. So those three guys, I would definitely think there's a top two here with CJ and Bryce. Bryce, CJ, you can put them in any order you want. The thing with Anthony Richardson, and I discussed earlier about ceiling and potential, Anthony Richardson's potential is obviously there. When you look at the tape, you obviously can see his talent on every single play. But that's another problem, is that you don't see the consistency on every single play. He'll be erratic from time to time in the passing game. Sometimes he doesn't make the best decisions. And that's kind of been the stereotype too. So I'm not saying anything here that's really new for anyone. Where I'm going with this is that when a guy like an Anthony Richardson gets picked in the first round, regardless if he's in the top 10 or late first round, you're going to have people who question that because of his consistency and it's because of his proven production. So let's hit on that proven production. We're talking about a guy who played on a 500 team for Florida, right? And we're looking at a Florida team this year who doesn't have high expectations, but they're coming off a year with, when you have a guy like an Anthony Richardson, you would think because of his talent, he can do better than what he did last year, right? Yeah. But he's very inconsistent, and as a result, Florida was inconsistent, as I mentioned, the 500 record in the regular season. So he's picked in the first round because of his potential. So it's almost like these scouts are selecting these guys, or we have managers and who are selecting these quarterbacks, and really, honestly, players, maybe an offensive tackle, like the guy Darnell Wright from Tennessee, a guy who's a little bit inconsistent but has a really high ceiling, because of what they feel like they can mold them into. And so I think that's what we're looking at here with Anthony Richardson, a guy who, didn't really have the consistency, but he obviously has all the talent in the world. So if they feel like they can mold him into something, then they feel like with his potential and his ceiling, he can be that caliber first-round player.
Oh, yeah. And in my research earlier, I was looking at the depth chart for all these teams, and Stroud and Young are both listed at number one quarterback, and Richardson right now is listed at second string. So
right, so it's almost like they're going to work with him, work on his skill set, mold him into what they think he can become, and then later on down the line, maybe he'll become a starter.
Yeah. Granted, he's sitting behind Gardner Minshew, who
the mustache. Yeah. Dude, that's what it's all about. It's because of the mustache. Anthony clearly needs to work on the facial hair.
Yeah.
So we talk about his consistency in the passing game. We need to talk about his facial hair.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody knows if you don't have a great mustache or great hair, you're a terrible quarterback, or just athlete in general.
That's right.
Just look at me.
And more than half the time, you have a mustache. So Yeah. So Adam, I have a question for you. Between CJ and Bryce, who do you think will have the better career?
Overall career, I mean, I really want to say C.J. Stroud, but he's on the Texans.
Yeah.
So just overall career, I'll stick with him. Maybe he gets traded into a better situation, but I mean, we'll see. Bryce Young, I believe he'll pan out like Kyler Murray, just undersized QB, injury prone now. So
That's the thing. Bryce Young is listed at 205 pounds, but he's 5'10".
yeah,
And he's not the most muscular dude out there.
right.
So, yeah, you do have to question his long-term sustainability in a league like the NFL. Because the guys in college who were really big and strong, maybe they weren't that fast. Those guys in the NFL can run.
Oh, yeah.
And they're big and strong as well. So, the long term is going to be the question with Bryce Young. If you're looking for short-term immediate success, I think Bryce is probably the guy. But, yeah, long-term, I would have to go CJ. This was my number one quarterback pick going into college football last year and then anticipating what the 2023 NFL draft would look like. CJ is obviously, he obviously showed his talent. He was pretty consistent, but I didn't think that he hit his ceiling scenario. I thought he could have done better, considering the situation that he was at Ohio State. The offensive tackles that Ohio State had last year, the pass blocking situation was tremendous. It was the best in the country, or one of the best in the country. And then, of course, Ohio State's receiving corps is the best right now in the country. It still is. Their depth, talent. It's not just their starters. It's not just the guys that you see listed at the top of the depth chart who have over 800 yards receiving, if not 1,000 yards. It's those third and fourth receivers as well that are ultra talented, that are better than most teams' first string receivers. So, yes, he had all the talent in the world surrounding him at Ohio State, so I understand that. But the mentality that we saw from CJ in the semifinal of the playoff against Georgia, you can go back and look at that game. You can look at the tape. You'll see what I'm saying. He played with an edge in that game. Maybe Ohio State kind of had their backs against the wall. They had nothing to lose coming off that Michigan game. But look at the way C.J. Stroud played. I never saw C.J. run so much in one game. So many times, I mean, not a ton of times, but when the pocket would break down, he would scramble for several yards when he needed to. He didn't do that before. In fact, you can ask Ohio State fans, or do you remember the Ohio State-Oregon game back in 2021 when Oregon went into Columbus and beat them? Well, there were several plays where CJ could have scrambled for 7, 8+ yards, and he throws it away or throws it into coverage. He wasn't doing that in that semifinal against Georgia. And that kind of performance from CJ, if he can play like, maybe not, he doesn't have to play to that degree every single game, but if he can play 90-95% to that degree, I think this is the best quarterback in this past year's NFL draft.
Right, and I mean, he lost Marvin Harrison Jr. in that first half, and he didn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba that
basically the whole year.
Yeah,
it was in and out of the year. Yeah.
So, I mean, to only lose by one on a missed field goal that honestly the dude should have made.
It was makeable. Yeah, I think it was like a 47, 48-yard field goal.
Yeah, like he shouldn't have missed. 30 yards to the left.
# college kickers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, they should have definitely won.
Yes. Yeah, and if you ask Ohio State fans, there was a non-call against Georgia's defense in the back of the end zone against Marvin Harrison Jr.
Which could have gone either way, really.
It could have, but even if they don't call that, I'm going to make the argument where if Marvin Harrison Jr. stays in the game for all 4 quarters, I think Ohio State wins that game because as soon as Marvin Harrison Jr. went out, that's when Georgia's defense was able to make a couple more stops. They weren't stopping Ohio State. They weren't even coming close to stopping Ohio State before that point. And the interesting thing about that matchup was that I discussed that Ohio State offensive line, their pass blocking. As good as Georgia's defense was last year, they weren't the best at rushing the passer.
Yeah.
They weren't as elite as you think they may have been. I think going into that semifinal game, they were 80-something in pressure rate. So, they weren't fantastic there. But Yeah, I thought it was an interesting matchup, and if you ask me, if Marvin Harrison, I'm not going to make the issue about the non-call. I'll make the argument about if Marvin Harrison Jr. stays in the game, Ohio State wins, and they probably win the national championship.
Oh yeah. Because I mean TCU, they're not that good.
They weren't as good as their record, that's for sure.
Definitely the worst. I don't want to say the worst 10-win team because Temple won 10 games and they were just dookie. But
yeah, in Minnesota back in 2019 won 11 games, and they probably weren't as good as their final record.
Oh, yeah.
In all due respect to PJ Fleck rowing the boat in Minneapolis. But yeah, TCU was definitely worse than their overall record. They kind of...
Yeah.
They were a pretty good team, senior-laden team.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of upperclassmen. They had some NFL draftees in there. So they had some sprinkled in quality throughout the depth chart. A lot of experience, and I can go into a tangent about TCU last year. But yeah, they weren't as good as their final record.
Oh yeah. 65-7 says it all. Just in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, and if Ohio State was in that spot, it would have been probably a 3-score, if not more, differential.
Oh yeah. But yes. Now let's talk about Bryce Young a little bit. We haven't talked about him.
Oh
much.
my gosh, Bryce Young. Well, I think he has C.J. Stroud's abilities, but he's shown more consistency than C.J.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is he's just the prototype is he's 5'10".
Yeah.
And I mean, he's only a couple of inches taller than me, and I'm not even playing in collegiate sports, much less professional sports.
Yeah.
The long-term sustainability, as we mentioned earlier, is the question. Who knows? Injuries are unforeseen. You can't predict injuries. But what are your thoughts on Bryce?
Yeah, I really like him. I think he'll be top 2 or 3 in Rookie of the Year voting.
I agree with that. Yes.
Oh yeah, but he's just too small, and I mean I think he's of the recent Bama QBs. Looking at Jalen Hurts to Mac Jones, he's one of the best. Really, only behind Jalen Hurts right now, just as far as going into the NFL. But yeah, I think he'll just end up getting hurt and just go off the rails a little bit, like Kyler Murray did. So
this is like messing with the market between CJ and Bryce, because in the market you have to make sure that when you put your money into a certain area that you're looking at long-term sustainability with your account rather than just what's peaking at the moment. Right. Bryce might be the guy that's peaking at the moment while CJ has the long-term sustainability. Right. And then, of course, with Anthony, I think his ceiling's higher, but I also think his floor is much lower than those two's, than Bryce and CJ's floors put together. So, if I had to put my money into a certain stock, I would put it into the CJ Stroud stock if we're looking at long-term here. If we're looking at 2023 numbers and who can peak this year, I would say Bryce because of the situation with the Texans. So, but yeah, I would say long-term is CJ.
Oh yeah. Like if you're looking at just divisional standings, just when determining which quarterback's going to do the best, the Texans and Colts are in the same division. So, I mean, one of the two is going to finish lower than the other. Yeah. Which will definitely help the Panthers and Bryce Young's case.
Right.
For best rookie QB. But, I mean, who knows? Could have a career like Russell Wilson. I mean, last year aside.
Yeah, the Denver Broncos were probably the number one most disappointing team last year in the NFL, without a doubt. Their defense was great, and with some of the guys that they got from trades, people probably thought their offense would improve, and I completely understand that thought process. But yeah, Denver certainly. I mean, they probably disappointed by not just a handful of games, but probably about half their games.
Oh yeah, I mean, it doesn't help when you're starting running back week 3 or 4 tears his ACL, and your number 3 receiver who has a really high catch rate, among the top 5% at least in the NFL. Tears his ACL in the preseason, and I believe he tore his Achilles again this year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the injury bug, just the past 3 or 4 years at least, has really hit the Broncos.
Yeah. They have had more unfortunate things occur than any other NFL team except for the Browns, because they're Cleveland. So it's just amazing to me how unfortunate Cleveland is actually in all sports.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, having to change the baseball team's name too.
Having to change the baseball team's name, and then outside of the 2016 NBA Finals, in Game 7, there, Game 6 and Game 7, those were both incredible games. Outside of that year, feels like every other year for professional sports in the city of Cleveland is just like bad luck written all over it.
Oh yeah, like I do feel bad for Cleveland, but I mean, certain person that will remain nameless is from there, and I don't particularly care for this person, but but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, and the Browns are the Browns.
Oh yeah. My name is Cleveland. Little Family Guy action right there. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that was all I had for just the top 3 QBs taken in the draft. Thank you to CFE.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'll have his Instagram linked in the description, so if you don't follow, I'll cry. But
and it's almost college football season, so I'm going to cry happy tears.
Oh yes.
Well, thank you for joining us today on O Day and Night, and thank you to Connor Hibbett for joining us, and hope to see y'all in the next episode sometime soon.